France 1944, 21:47 hours. Captain Robert Hawley, 27, fighter pilot, grips the controls while checking failing instruments and forcing the aircraft to hold altitude as alarms cut in and out. He speaks into the radio telling the wingman he is hit while adjusting. Trim with shaking hands and kicking the rudder to keep the nose steady as fuel pressure drops and the engine stutters without pause. His left hand slips from sweat and oil, and he wipes it on his flight suit while reaching again for the throttle. He tells the radio operator he can still fly while watching the gauge fall. The plane jerks, and he counters with force through the stick. A warning light flashes, and he decides to cut non-essential power as the aircraft lurches forward and then settles into a rough line. The engine coughs hard, and he lowers the nose slightly to preserve speed. He tells the voice on the radio to stay close while pressing the transmit switch with his thumb. The response crackles and fades, and he repeats the order louder while scanning the panel. The aircraft shudders again, and he locks his jaw and holds the course despite the loss. A sharp vibration runs through the frame, and he braces his feet while pulling the stick back a fraction. He mutters that the control is stiff while adjusting mixture and prop pitch. The radio answers with confusion, and he cuts it off to focus. The fighter drifts, and he corrects late, causing a brief roll that costs more altitude than planned. Smoke seeps past the cockpit edge, and he leans forward to keep sight. He tells himself to keep it together while pushing the throttle until resistance stops him. The engine responds unevenly, and he eases back. Another alert sounds, and he flips a switch by memory, choosing control over speed as the plane steadies but grows slower. He reaches to secure loose gear and feels the tremor increase. He calls out that he cannot hold long while testing the ailerons. The response urges him to head east, and he nods though unseen. The fighter dips, and he counters with rudder again, deciding to maintain straight flight even if it costs power he cannot spare. A sudden drop forces him to pull hard, and the strain locks his shoulders. He grunts and tells the radio he's losing lift while checking altitude. The numbers fall, and he stops chasing them. He chooses a constant attitude and breathes through clenched teeth as the engine keeps a fragile rhythm that might fail any second. He fumbles for a backup light and finds it dead. He curses once and pockets it while keeping one hand steady. He tells the radio to listen closely and keep eyes open. The aircraft yaws, and he arrested. Another warning blinks, and he ignores it, deciding the remaining power must be reserved for control, not speed. The nose wavers, and he fights the urge to correct too much. He speaks calmly now, telling the other pilot to stay with him and watch his position. The reply comes faint, but present, and he nods again. The fighter holds a narrow line, and he commits to it, knowing any sharp move will end the flight. A hard jolt runs through the frame, and he absorbs it with arms locked. He says he will try one last measure while checking the time and fuel. The radio asks what he means, and he does not answer yet. The plane steadies just enough, and he prepares to act before the engine finally quits. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. It helps a lot. A sudden blackout hits the panel, and he reacts by leveling the wings through feel alone. He speaks to the radio, telling the other pilot to watch closely while his hand reaches for the small flashlight clipped to his vest. The engine falters again, and he commits to the idea without hesitation. The beam clicks on, and he raises it toward the canopy edge. He tells the voice to look for light while keeping the aircraft steady with small corrections. The fighter slips left, and he counters gently. The flashlight shakes in his grip, and he steadies it against his helmet, deciding to use it as a fixed point. The radio answers that the light is visible, and he exhales through his nose while holding position. He instructs the other pilot to guide him verbally using the beam as reference. The aircraft drops slightly, and he adjusts trim. The engine coughs but holds, and he keeps the light steady despite the vibration. A brief surge pulls the nose up, and he pushes forward to compensate. He asks for distance. Updates while angling the flashlight outward. The reply comes fast and clipped, and he follows it. The fighter aligns closer, and he locks his arms to reduce movement as the controls grow heavier. The light flickers once, and he slaps it back on. Without looking, he tells the other pilot to keep talking no matter what while maintaining The aircraft wobbles, and he rides it out, choosing not to correct too sharply. The engine steadies again, and he holds the course through restraint. Another jolt throws his shoulder forward, and he grits his teeth. He keeps the light trained outward and asks if it is still seen. The radio confirms and gives a minor correction. He follows it, and the fighter responds slowly. The delay costs altitude, but preserves alignment. His wrist cramps, and he switches grip. Without losing the beam, he tells the voice to slow the guidance and make it simple. The aircraft drifts, and he nudges it back. The engine sputters, and he reduces load immediately, choosing survival over precision. The flashlight beam grows steadier as his breathing evens out. He listens and reacts without question while maintaining attitude. The other pilot calls small changes, and he applies them. The fighter holds together through balance rather than force, and the descent becomes controlled. A warning tone returns, and he silences it by touch. He keeps the light fixed and asks how far they are. The reply gives a short estimate, and he commits to holding this method. The engine weakens again, but the aircraft stays responsive enough. The nose dips, and he accepts it. He keeps the beam visible and follows the voice precisely. The fighter glides now more than flies, and he allows it. The decision reduces strain, and the aircraft stabilizes into a fragile but workable path. The engine stutters sharply, and he reacts by easing pressure off the controls. He tells the guiding voice to keep talking while holding the flashlight. Rigid, the aircraft loses thrust, and he accepts the glide. The fighter responds more smoothly, and he commits to minimal input to avoid another stall. A sudden vibration rattles his arm, and the beam wavers. He tightens his grip and braces his elbow. He asks if the light is still clear while correcting a slow roll. The reply confirms and issues a short adjustment. He follows it immediately, and the aircraft settles again. The nose drifts right, and he counters late but gently. He keeps the light steady as instructed and ignores a new alarm. The fighter descends at a controlled rate, and he chooses not to fight it. The engine coughs once more and then runs uneven but usable. His vision narrows, and he blinks hard to stay focused. He tells the guiding pilot to keep commands short and constant. The flashlight remains fixed and becomes the sole reference. The aircraft responds sluggishly, and he compensates early to avoid overcorrection. A sharp drop forces a quick pull, and he limits it before the wings protest. He says he almost lost it while recentering the beam. This response comes firm and immediate, and he obeys. The fighter regains balance at the cost of more altitude. The light slips from his fingers for a split second, and he traps it against his chest. He restores the beam outward and confirms visibility. The radio answers yes and gives a correction. He applies it and locks his wrist to prevent another slip. The engine noise thins, and he adjusts mixture by instinct. He tells the voice he has little power left and receives a steady stream of guidance. The aircraft now glides fully, and he maintains attitude through restraint rather than strength. A tremor runs through the frame, and he stiffens. He keeps the flashlight trained and ignores the urge to scan instruments. The other pilot calls alignment, and he follows. The fighter tracks true for several seconds without correction. His arm burns, and he switches hands smoothly. He warns of the change while keeping the beam visible. The reply adjusts timing, and he complies. The aircraft remains controllable, and the descent stays predictable. The controls soften further, and he realizes the glide is stable. He stops chasing minor movement and listens only to the voice. The flashlight holds its line, and the fighter continues forward under guidance alone. The landing gear refuses to lock, and he responds by keeping the glide shallow. He tells the guiding pilot to stay with him while holding the flashlight steady. The aircraft sinks faster, and he accepts it, choosing alignment over mechanical certainty as the controls grow lighter. A jolt runs through the frame, and he absorbs it without correction. He keeps the beam fixed and listens as the voice gives final adjustments. The fighter drifts, and he counters just enough. The glide path holds, and the engine gives one last uneven push before fading back. The nose drops, and he lets it. He tells the voice he has no power margin while maintaining the beam. The reply stays calm and precise, and he follows it exactly. The aircraft responds cleanly, and the descent becomes smooth through compliance rather than force. The wheels touch hard, and he keeps the stick steady. He cuts what remains of the engine while holding the flashlight outward. The fighter bounces once and settles, and he rides it out. The voice confirms alignment, and he maintains direction through roll. A sudden pull to one side forces a firm correction, and he applies it without panic. He keeps the beam visible until speed drops. The aircraft slows, and he eases pressure. The decision prevents a ground loop, and the fighter stays upright. The light flickers as he lowers his arm, and he finally switches it off. He speaks once to confirm he is down while securing controls. The response comes immediate and relieved, and he nods though unseen as the aircraft rolls to a stop. He releases his grip and flexes his hand. He shuts remaining switches by touch and listens for any movement. Nothing follows, and he stays still. The consequence of restraint now clear in the intact frame and silent cockpit. The canopy opens and he remains seated for a moment. He answers a final call and confirms status while breathing evenly. The aircraft rests complete and functional enough, and the guidance ends with short acknowledgments. He climbs out slowly and steps away under instruction. He turns once to signal completion, and the exchange ends. The method crude but effective, and the outcome undeniable through survival and recovery. What did you think? Intriguing, right? Watch the video on your screen. I selected it especially for you. See you there.